You're listening to the Back Home Network, presented by Home Field Apparel.
And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another edition of Assembly Call Radio, where we discuss the most important topics in the world of Indiana basketball. This is our 1,081st episode overall of the Assembly Call, and it's recorded on the evening of July 3rd, 2026. I'm your host, the coach, Brian Tonsoni. And let's begin this edition of the Assembly Call, how we begin every edition of the Assembly Call, and that is with our Hoosier Proud banner moment.
And Indiana is the national champion.
When it comes down, Indiana will be champion.
Martin takes the shot.
The Hoosiers have won the national championship.
Our banner moment tonight is the release of the non-conference portion of Indiana's 2025-26 schedule. With this release, we are now closer to the new season under a first-year coach, Darren DeVries. The new hire, the portal, the staff changes, and the new recruiting news all bring a certain level of excitement about Indiana basketball, but it's games that we know now, and then it'll be about winning those games that really matter. While we all believe Indiana has either been successful or maybe not successful in any of these off-season areas, the schedule release gives us something more concrete to discuss. We can debate the strength of the schedule, where the games are being played, and maybe try to even make some predictions, which are always fun at this point of the season at the beginning of July. But regardless of how one feels about the new Hoosiers, the schedule release brings us one more step closer to actually seeing if Indiana, with the new hire, has improved the basketball program. Also, are you going to go to Chicago, to Indianapolis, to Lexington to follow the Hoosiers? You better start making your plans because you know some of the games. The Big Ten schedule will be released soon, and then for sure we will be able to make our great judgments about how many wins Indiana is going to get and if indeed they will make the tournament. Okay, now let me introduce my co-host for this week, starting with the Shot Doctor from San Diego, California. He's a senior sports writer at Sports Illustrated. It's Ryan Phillips.
Analyzing players, finding every wrinkle. He hasn't ever hosted, never lifted a finger. He's got all the answers.
Well, let me quickly add just one thing about this.
Dude just interrupted his own jingle.
Ryan, what's on your mind today about Indiana basketball?
Well, on non-Indiana basketball move, congratulations to my sister and her husband, Michael, who got married over the weekend. So we're very, very happy about that. But as far as IU goes, obviously the Prince Alexander Moody commitment was the biggest news just for Darren DeVries to get his first high school, prep commitment. A guy we'll talk about in this episode, but I thought it was really nice for him to get added to the roster for next year. You can start building out that class. And then, of course, the schedule release, which we'll talk about. Again, we're just starting to get basketball news. And I think it's been a little quiet for a while since all the transfers are finalized and all of that. And we're starting to get a little bit of basketball news as we get into July. And I'm sure in August we'll get even more as more visits happen and all of that with the recruits. So I think that we're just, looking at a program that's not only looking towards this season, but looking towards the future. And that feels good when you get a commitment. You could start, dreaming on that future. So a nice player who we'll talk about, but I think that was the biggest news to come out of this week for me.
And joining us from Cincinnati, Ohio, he is the Terry Francona of youth sports coaching. It's the venerable Andy Bottoms.
You'll have fun.
The Hoosiers make the tourney again.
Fun.
Yes, you'll have
Fun.
The Hoosiers make the tourney again.
Fun.
Yes, you'll have
Fun.
I mean, it would be fun to make the tournament. I mean,
Yeah. Andy, what's on your mind?
no, good to see you guys. Been quite a while for me, but lots going on here. The high school graduate and a soon-to-be college freshman, so lots going on at the end of the school year, plus vacation and stuff like that. So good to be back. But yeah, like you guys said, good to see some basketball news, seen some of the videos come out that the team has posted of the practices and things like that. I know Coach loves those as much as anything, but at least gives you something to look at. First look at these guys in IU gear doing something on a basketball court. So you got to take what you can get at this point. But exciting that, coming up is the Puerto Rico trip that, should be able to get a little bit more of an idea of what this team can at least start to look like at that point, which is exciting. We'll at least get a little bit of a appetizer before the season with being able to hear about those games and see what happens there. But certainly excited for the season. And the football team put some stuff out about the finishing touches on the stadium and things like that. So I know everybody's excited about that. So that having a football program to be excited about and look forward to will at least help bridge the gap between now and the beginning of the basketball season.
Always good to have the crew back together. Andy, good to see you. Haven't talked to you for a while. And it is closer to IU football and then following IU basketball, which we're excited about. So in this episode of Assembly Call Radio, we're going to start off segment 1 talking about Hoosier headlines. Segment 2, we're going to analyze the non-conference schedule that came out this week. And in segment 3, as always, we are going to answer your questions in the mailbag. All of that is coming up this week on Assembly Call Radio. But first, let's talk about our presenting sponsor.
Home field apparel, wear one for the team.
This edition of Assembly Call Radio, just like all the shows on the Back Home Network, is presented by our friends at Home Field Apparel, where they have the largest collection of vintage IU apparel that you'll find anywhere. And it's not just IU. Home Field has unique, interesting designs printed on the softest, most comfortable fabrics for over 150 colleges and universities, plus plenty other brands like Little Five, IndyCar, The Fever, and more. And they're always expanding and trying something new, including new schools, unique bundle ideas. They have some mystery tees and some new gear coming out throughout the summer. The only downside is that with Home Field's ever-expanding popularity, sometimes the best stuff sells out quickly. So if you want to have a shot at getting stuff when it's released, you really need to follow them on their social medias, subscribe to their texts and emails, and make sure you're staying up to date so you don't miss anything. I haven't bought stuff for quite a while. I'm saving up for the fall football season, but I do still have a huge closet full of Home Field apparel. And you can too if you go to homefieldapparel.com and use our promo code HOME23 to get 15% off your entire first order. That's promo code HOME23 for 15% off. Once again, the website is homefieldapparel.com. Wear one for the team. We have quite a few headlines, fellas, and you can take this wherever you want. I think we'll talk about Prince Alexander Moody. I know the X's and Joe's and Galen did a nice 30-minute podcast, which I recommend everyone to go watch to get into some of the particulars. But a nice addition for the class of 2026. We can talk about the importance of rankings or not rankings and who offered and who didn't offer, but I think it fits the prototype, and we'll discuss that. Also, the completion of the staff. Indiana made an announcement of all the different positions, and you can find that on various media. But the staff is complete, and they're at work getting ready for the trip coming up. The non-conference schedule came out, and that'll be our focus of the second segment. Some good games on there. I think it's a good non-conference schedule, and Andy and I can talk to maybe some of the bracketology impacts as we see it here in the summer. Ryan was also on a podcast for the commitment that'll join us this year after he plays overseas, the Serbian guard Alexa Ristic. So we can talk about that if you want. Bart Torvik came out with his preseason, way too early compilation of rankings, which has Indiana, I believe, 11th or 12th in a tight-knit group from 7 to 12. Anthony Leal was denied his appeal and will not get an extra year of eligibility. Umar Balo is playing in the summer with the Miami Heat. And as Andy mentioned, workouts and practices are continuing, gearing up for the season and for their overseas trip or their foreign trip. And there's been a couple of mic'd up videos of coaches at practice, as Andy mentioned, that if you can go back and kind of see what's going on with Indiana basketball. Andy, throw it to you. The new recruit, we'll save the schedule stuff for the second segment. Where would you like to go?
I'll throw out, like you said, the schedule. A couple notes. I'll kind of take the coaching staff and some of the videos. I know we like to joke about the videos a little bit, and I'm sure everybody had a visceral reaction to Kenny Johnson yelling about deflections in the one. So people may have turned that one off when it got to a certain point, but it does at least give you a view into what they're emphasizing. And I thought the Kenny Johnson one was particularly good, where kind of over and over, do your job, which is really focusing on those fundamentals. I think the one with I think Norton was the other assistant coach, was in one of his was like, we got to practice good habits, don't travel, you got to do this and things like that. So heard a lot in the Kenny Johnson one about being tough on the ball defensively, a lot of stuff about spacing and different things like that. So things that kind of fit in with what we think this team is going to need to be able to do to be successful, to really put a lot of pressure on the ball to make up for the lack of size, the spacing given the guys that they brought in to be able to shoot the ball, and just the intensity that he was bringing. So I did enjoy it, but it's you take all that stuff with a grain of salt, but it to me, that was a little bit better than seeing guys just rain in every shot that goes up. So I'll at least take a little bit of a glimpse into what they're doing from a coaching perspective there. And I think as you look at the support staff stuff, I think, a lot of the names on there we knew, going in. So not a ton to take away. What I did like was just a couple things as DeVries looks at guys who know how he operates. Garrett Sturtz was a guy who some of these I remember the names from them playing at Drake. And so he was a guy who was with him at Drake as a player, was with him at West Virginia last year. Shanquan Hemphill, I remember watching him play, a guy who's played for him. So I think as you have guys around who understand his philosophy and how he does things, and what he wants to do systematically, I think those things are important to be able to, give guys other people to talk to, but guys who are also familiar with how he does things. So, those are the two things I like. Like I said with you guys in text, the extent of what I know about Prince Alexander Moody is what I heard on the podcast with the guys. Elite name, though, I will say that, but that doesn't really help too much other than that.
Tier.
But yeah, so that was good. So I'll let somebody else do the heavy lifting on that part. But
well, I do appreciate watching coaches coach. So if there are going to be the videos where people are mic'd up, as you said, you get to know the assistant coaches. I think it's nice to see them at work. A lot of that stuff is being said at every program in the Big Ten and around the country. So again, my disdain for those, but those are there for a purpose, because you have to communicate to your future portal recruiting and your high school recruiting, and you need to do that, because if not, you're going to get passed by. So I'm not anti-videos. I just I do like hearing what they're saying, and I do think that you're going to see hopefully attention to detail that'll help them figure out what they're doing offensively and defensively there. Ryan, when you go to this, the new commitment, and again, that we haven't been focusing on recruiting here with the assembly call, Prince Alexander Moody, what's the general takeaways, if you don't want to do a full, scouting report yet, but what's the takeaways from getting that recruit, a variety of like 100th to 170th on some rankings, 4-star. What does all that mean as we see the first recruit of that class?
Yeah, I think that the thing that stands out about him is his shot. He shoots it confidently. I'm not sure he's a great driver right now, though he kind of has some quickness in that area. Seems pretty well run. For 6'4", he's got some length. I think he's listed at 180, 185, but he'll probably play around 200, 205. I mean, he's got that kind of body to fill out a little bit when he gets to college. But just you look at his shot, he gets it up quickly, he shoots it confidently, it goes in. I think I read somewhere he shot high 30s at the EYBL. But it's that kind of thing at that age. The shooting percentage is going to vary. It's a matter of what the shot looks like and how it can translate. I think that's there, and he's a nice building block recruit. He's not a 5-star, surefire win, but he's a guy who has some good size at the position, is probably a shooting guard, maybe combo guard, not a point guard. And yeah, I think that he's got some size and length to be a good defender as well if he can move. He's got some quickness, and so like that can translate defensively. I think, looking at how he fits into what Darren DeVries wants to do is going, we don't know yet because we haven't really seen the product on the floor that he's going to be walking into. We've seen it at West Virginia, we've seen it at Drake, but the Indiana version of that is going to be different because of the types of players and the types of athleticism he's going to have. And so it's hard to know exactly where he fits, but you're looking at a guy who's probably a two guard, who's a shooter, who can do some things for you, help space the floor, and then when he has the opportunities, use his quickness to drive to the rim and finish. So yeah, I like what I've seen from him. I'll admit I have not done a deep film study on him yet because I just haven't had the opportunity. But what I have seen, I do like as a usable Big Ten player. Where he develops will be mostly on him and what the staff does and how he fits into that offense. But you can see a little bit, and we've talked about this before, the type of player that Darren DeVries wants. You have to be able to shoot to play for him. I think that's the bottom line, baseline of these guys. You have to be able to space the floor, and then you have to have additional skills on top of that, whether it's defense, whether it's the ability to drive, whether it's the ability to pass, basketball IQ, whatever it is. But the baseline is you got to be able to shoot the basketball. And this kid can do that. And so that he fits into the pattern of what we've seen so far.
Yeah, watching his tape, he really does a good job of being shot ready when he's playing off the basketball. I think he's played a lot of point guard on his team takeover, one of the best teams, again, according to the X's and Joe's guys. But he's more going to be of a combo guard, if anything, where you have multiple ball handlers, right? The ability to drive after a kick out and a drive. But he just fits that prototype 6'4" athlete that can score the basketball and probably do some things defensively. And that's, I think, going to be what we see from a Coach DeVries team. Again, like you said, at least that we can kind of piece together from not seeing the team in action. Andy, your thoughts on Prince Alexander Moody?
Yeah, I mean, it does seem like DeVries has a type, if you will, in terms of what he's looking for, which is in a lot of ways like the exact type of player that has been missing in so many recent years, that he is just stockpiling guys like that, kind of those guys that can play the 2 or the 3 wing type players who can shoot. And so, you look at Prince Alexander Moody. I watched some of the videos out there, which, you take what you will from those, but certainly a willing shooter. Seems like his shooting percentages has kind of jumped around a little bit. Different places have dropped off during play more recently. And I know they touched on that with Mike and Bob and Galen. And so I don't know that it's a huge concern as you look at that. Has been somebody who's, has some proven ability to shoot it, has played with other really talented players. And so I think a good addition and a good, building piece that could really grow into the program. You need to find ways to do that. This year, ideally, you're not doing that every year where you're replacing your entire roster. If there's a couple guys who will be back with eligibility, but he's a guy who, if he sticks around, you can see him kind of growing into a role. There is a bit of how much are guys going to want to stick around in that scenario, which remains to be seen, both at IU and really anywhere these days. But I think you can see, kind of a long-term guy who would have a small role potentially as a freshman, but really grow into something bigger over the course of time. And I think from a length perspective, we talked about some of the defensive stuff. Seems like he's got a pretty good wingspan and could be disruptive on that end. And so, a good addition, good way to get things rolling, good way to get somebody from the DMV who we know, Kenny Johnson, to go back to that, and plays with, I cannot remember the Smith, I think is the guy's last name, but another guy who IU's going after really hard. He's one of the better players as a teammate of his. So also can't hurt you from that perspective as well.
I'm going to throw this question back to you because I'm sure a lot of people are wondering as you read about Prince Alexander Moody. He was, and this is from Inside the Hall, our friends over at Inside the Hall, number 152 player nationally in the rising senior class, I think was as high as 104. But he also got scholarship offers from Illinois, Maryland, Michigan State, Providence, Virginia Tech. Michigan's and Illinois are in the top tier of the Big Ten, according to Bart Torvik. So those are programs that wanted this young man. Ryan, when you look at rankings, do they mean anything, or is it more scholarship offers, or is it more just, hey, trust your coach to get the guy in as that building piece that Andy said, to stay 2 or 3 years? How should we look at that as fans?
Yeah, I think that you look at the range. I think that, whether 5-star, 4-star, 3-star, you look at the range. A 5-star, you tend to believe, okay, that guy's going to have a chance to go to the NBA after his freshman year if all things hit right, or he's going to be a 2-year guy or something like that. Look at 4 stars. Okay, there's a range there of outcomes. 3-star, this guy's a high 3-star, potential to move up to a 4-star. That's the range for him. So it's going to be a lot on development and moving forward. And so, but I do think that when you're looking at that range, look at who has offered him. Have good coaches been interested in him? Have good coaches pursued him? Sometimes you paper offers out there, but it's not really a committable offer. It's like, we'll take you if 3 guys, don't say yes, then you're going to be on our list. Are other teams actually interested in pursuing you? It seemed like he had some guys pursuing him. And so, yes, that does mean something for sure. And to me, that means as much as a ranking. I think the ranking is broad, and guys outplay or underplay their rankings all the time. It just kind of gives you a baseline range to look at for expectations. And so, I do think the fact that other coaches were after him does say a lot.
Yeah, and Kenny Johnson, really good recruiting in that area. You got to trust his ability to pick out talent. Andy, coming back to you, one last thing on our first commit of the year. Do you said this about balance, returning players versus starting over from scratch. When we look at the Big Ten, the Torvik rankings, and who's coming back, it's about half and half. Half the programs, whether they have new coaches or not, are like completely, 10, 11 new guys. And then the teams that are at the top of Bart Torvik's rankings all have 4 or 5 guys coming back. Some of them have been 2 or 3 year players. Some of them have been transfer in playing for a second year. How do you see that going forward in the 2026 recruiting year? Can we find any pattern from Coach DeVries early, or from what he said of where this is going to end up, how he's going to recruit?
I guess my general thought is this is less about anything that he said versus just my own thoughts about it. But I think you've got to figure out a way to strike the balance. I think you've seen coaches at times, like Eric Musselman is an example, right? Like when he was at Arkansas, would pretty much reload every year, and that worked. Some years they had a deep tournament run the one year, they were really bad another year. Like that to me is an absolute roller coaster that I think people are largely trying to get off of. And he's basically, now he's gone to at USC now. Is that where
USC.
He went? And he's doing the same thing. Now, part of that is coming into a new program, and I kind of get it. And you see the same thing with Maryland, with Willard going there. They had a lot of guys leaving anyway through graduation, but they've pretty much overhauled theirs. So I think you got to find a way to strike the balance. I don't think you necessarily have to be, some of the real extremes where you don't have anybody coming and going. You don't have some of that, but I also don't. It's hard to make a living turning your whole roster over every year. I think what's challenging about that, though, is being able to bring in guys who are either going to be comfortable in that role and growing into something, to be able to do that, or you got to get freshmen who are going to be able to come in and play right away. And so, presumably Prince Alexander Moody is okay with the first of those options that I said, because I don't think there's, his recruiting pedigree and things like that suggests it's probably not going to be in his best interest or IU's for him to come in and start right away. So I think you got to be able to sell people on that. And I think the more that people see what a Darren DeVries team looks like and plays like, the easier that becomes. I think that gets tricky early on to be able to do that, because you can say what you want. You can put on tape of where you played before. You can do all these things. But in this conference at this school, what have you done? You don't have that to fall back on. You don't have guys that you can put in front of them and say, hey, you're going to follow the path of this guy. And look how we were able to help him develop. The longer he's around, the more you've got that to be able to build in as part of your recruiting pitch. So that's where it gets a little bit tough. But I think it's inevitable anymore that you're going to have a good amount of new guys from the portal in a given year. But I do think there's value from a culture standpoint and all those things to having some holdovers that you'd be able to keep there. And this seems like a kid who could be somebody that you start to build that along with the guys who came in that still do have a couple years of eligibility. And you just kind of build that foundation over time where, next year, do you have 4 guys coming back that have already been with the program versus this year you had 0? That's a pretty good jump. And maybe you get to 6 the year after that and things of that nature. So that's at least the way that I think of it, whether that's the right way to do it or I think you can look at teams each year that are successful doing it either way. But I do think you've found it. I would be hard pressed to find teams who have really overhauled, 80+% of the roster every year and had a sustained level of success.
And to that point, we didn't talk about the Serbian guard, Alexa Ristic. I know, Ryan, you did a show about him. But Ristic and Prince Alexander Moody and Trent Sisley, those are all guys that can play, but they also can come in and be developed for a 2 or 3 year period, hopefully stay longer than that. But in this basketball world, we don't know. But it looks like you can start to see the pattern. You're going to bring in guys in the portal that you want from DeVries. You're going to go for high school guys. We've offered some real top-notch guys that have yet to make a decision. These are foundational building blocks when the schools that are going after these guys. And then, Coach Adams was overseas and looking at European players as well. And European players, very fundamental and can shoot the basketball. So you're starting to see the plan of Coach DeVries on the recruiting front. So welcome to the young man to Indiana. We'll be hoping you have a good senior year. And then we'll see Prince Alexander Moody in the pinstripes or candy stripes. Pinstripes, been watching baseball too long. To end segment 1, we have to say thank you to Anthony Leal for what he's done for the Indiana basketball program. His waiver was denied, and so his career at Indiana and in college basketball comes to an end. You saw a post where he was trying to get rid of some of his gear. You do really appreciate someone who really wanted to be at Indiana, wanted to play at Indiana for the right reasons, and was always ready when he got his shot. So for me, out to Anthony, thank you for what you've done. Ryan, Andy, any thoughts about his waiver particular, the waiver process, or anything in that nature?
Yeah, it was expected that he was likely going to get that rejected, but Anthony, I think, epitomized a lot of what you want in a college basketball player. He's a hometown kid who really wanted to play for Indiana, stuck around through some tough times, had some moments towards the end of his career that were memorable, and really became one of those guys that people really connected with. And I think that's all you can ask out of a college basketball career, quite frankly, is to have a fan base think you were memorable. And, he was never going to be a guy when he came in that was going to go to the NBA. So his ceiling was a little lower, but I thought that, we all lobbied pretty hard for him to get a lot more playing time earlier in his career. And it took till the end for that to happen. And so good for him putting in the work to make that happen. And he had some, again, really memorable moments in an IU uniform that people will remember and remember him for. And he's a Bloomington South kid and has done, was able to do that. So that's a great career in my opinion. So great, good on him, and wish him nothing but the best moving forward. And I'm sure he'll be around the program in the future as well.
Absolutely. Andy?
Yeah, I not much to add there. Like Ryan said, I don't think anybody was too surprised by this. For as much as the NCAA has tended to roll over in a lot of these waiver type cases, I don't know that there was a overly compelling argument, and probably opened up a slippery slope for them if they had granted him the waiver, but worth a shot from, put yourself in his shoes. So, but definitely a guy who his play toward the end of really both of the last 2 seasons has been one of the bright spots of those seasons, which have been disappointing in a lot of ways, but somebody who, really came in, did things the right way, and represented the program well. So excited to see that. And sure, he's got a lot going on. I know already from a, real estate standpoint, and doing other things. So he'll definitely be around Bloomington, around the program, I'm sure.
All right, that'll do it for our first segment. Coming up on Assembly Call Radio, we're going to discuss the recently released non-conference schedule for your Indiana Hoosiers. So stick with us here on Assembly Call. All right, everybody. Thanks for being here. Andy and Ryan, good to have you guys back together. We're getting closer. I don't like it as a summer vacation is starting to dwindle, but I feel bad saying that to people who don't have 10 straight weeks off. But
Coach, I think
those people couldn't do what you do anyway. So what are you going to say?
Yeah, I certainly couldn't. I think your audio is coming through your computer, Coach, because when you're typing, I could really hear it.
All right, let me go see on the settings here. How's that?
Way better.
Does that sound better?
And honestly, the audio wasn't bad, like, so it's not something we have to go back and worry about. But it was just when you were typing right there, it came through.
I saw the mic was working, and I didn't check that mic was the computer mic, not the actual mic.
Didn't matter.
All right,
don't worry, we don't have to start over. It's fine.
Yeah.
No, we're not.
You guys want to? We can. I know exactly what I said. So
no, thank you.
All right. I do have to be out of here at 7:30, so I hope Jared gets here real quick.
All righty. We'll hit this second segment here with the non-conference schedule. All right, let's go.
Hi, this is AJ Moye. What's the only thing better than upsetting Duke in the Sweet 16? Celebrating it with friends afterwards. Join Jared, Andy, Ryan, and Coach for the assembly call after every IU basketball game. Go Hoosiers.
Welcome back to the assembly call. I'm the coach, Brian Tonsoni, here with Andy Bottoms and Ryan Phillips. And now it's time to discuss the non-conference portion of Indiana's basketball schedule that was just recently announced. I'll read through it real quick, and then I'll turn it over to the guys to give their comments. The season starts November 5th against Alabama A&M. Then on Sunday, November 9th in Chicago, they take on Marquette. Then Wednesday, November 12th, Milwaukee from the Horizon League. Sunday, November 16th, Incarnate Word. Thursday, November 20th, Lindenwood. Tuesday, November 25th, that's Thanksgiving week, is Kansas State comes to Bloomington from the Big 12. Saturday, November 29th, Bethune-Cookman takes on your Indiana Hoosiers. Then that's the start of several Saturday games in a row. The next Saturday, December 6th, is Louisville in Indianapolis. And then December 13th, we travel to Kentucky. And then finally, the last Saturday, December 20th, Chicago State. And Monday, December 22nd, Siena. And somewhere in there will probably be Big Ten basketball at some point, conference starting, as usual, in late November, early December. Andy, as you take a look at this conference, if you're watching, we do have it posted on the video. What comes to mind when you first saw the non-conference schedule released?
Yeah, as you say that about the Big Ten, like I got a feeling, I think in other years they've played them like both within the same week. It doesn't look like there's a great place for that to happen for IU this year. So they'll probably be interspersed a couple different places if I had to guess. But yeah, I mean, as you look at it, I think you've got it's certainly less dependent upon how you play in a preseason event like last year. But the net result is you really have 4 games that matter the most. That, a couple on neutral courts against Marquette and Louisville, both teams that made the tournament last year. Marquette lost a decent amount. Louisville still has a bunch of guys back. So rankings there from at least the preseason Torvik, Louisville's, top 20 and Marquette's closer to 50. I tend to believe Marquette will probably outperform that in the long run, but you got a couple neutral site games. You got the Kansas State game at home, and then you go travel to Kentucky. And so, those 4 games really is, as we start thinking, if you want to think from a bracketology standpoint, is how do you fare in those 4 games matters a whole lot. can you split those? You know, do you win the home game against Kansas State and you split the neutral games? I think you'd feel pretty good about that. I think what you have that's a little bit different than a year ago is a lot more lower. I guess what I would assume will finish as lower ranked teams. You're going to have a lot more likely to have a lot more quad 4 games. One of the things that was good about last year's schedule and actually helped IU's case for the tournament was they ended up with very few games in quad 4 against the, kind of worst of the worst. And so they had a lot of games that ended up in quad 3 that they won, but against at least decent teams from mid-major conferences. That seems a lot less likely to happen this year. If you look at preseason, Torvik rankings, I think Siena is the best one at 157. Incarnate Word is 197. Incarnate Word, the schedule did give my wife the chance to learn that Incarnate Word is a school. She asked me about that. I go, they've been D1 for a while, actually. So, so you got that. I think Bethune-Cookman was another one that was in the top 200 of that. So I think you're going to have a lot more of those games. But, one of the things we've lamented in previous years is IU didn't just blow the doors off some of these bad teams that they played and game the net, if you will, as people have talked about. So there will be some opportunities to do that and to see how this team handles those situations and can they really win some of those games handily, because that's going to be pretty important. And then, like I said, try to split the 4 key games and see where things go from there. But definitely some exciting games. Get regionality from a Louisville and Kentucky standpoint. Marquette's been an exciting program to watch. They're one that I really enjoy. I know, Coach, you've said the same thing. And Kansas State being able to, a little bit like South Carolina last year, be able to get a major conference team to come to your place, it gives you an opportunity to get a solid win.
I think the Kansas State is just a one-game thing, too. There's no return trip to Kansas State planned at
Don't have to go to the Octagon. That's good.
No. And really with those, so you have 4 major opponents and then you have 7 other ones, and you really try to schedule based on how good are they going to be this year for those numbers. And sometimes the preseason stuff, you think a team's 180 and then they end up, in the 300 in the net down the road. So a lot of that will depend on how those teams have reloaded and rebuilt their roster. You want to try to play teams, and I haven't looked deeply into this schedule yet, that are going to be in the top half of their conference, even if they're smaller schools. I think, the game Alabama A&M probably is the one that's going to be the cupcake. Chicago State, too. Those 2 are probably the weakest, but I do think it's a pretty well-balanced schedule. Ryan, when you first saw this, your thoughts on the schedule and games you think maybe Indiana needs to pull out to get ready for Big Ten play?
Well, let's just get the elephant out of the room. We've been circling December 13th for how long for that Kentucky game? I mean, that's the one that stands out here. I mean, just looking at that schedule and seeing the UK on the schedule, they tried Kansas. It's the same letters. It's not the same. We're doing Kentucky again. Like it's let's do this. And I think everybody's really fired up about that on both sides of that rivalry, that we get to redo that again. I know it's in Lexington. Some of you will have to go to Lexington. I apologize for that. It's not Bloomington, but finally this rivalry is back on. I'm very excited for it. And I'm excited it's the first year with a new coach too, that we get to sort of start this thing fresh. As far as the rest of it, we knew some of these already, but I look at it and I don't feel bad about it. Last year, I felt really bad about it. I thought there were a couple of really big games and then a bunch of garbage, and that was not going to help Indiana. And they were banking on winning one of the big games and then doing well in the Big Ten and making the tournament off of that. This feels more balanced. It feels like there are a couple opportunities to play some good teams, but they're not going to be ranked. It's unlikely they'll be ranked in the top 5. And you're not rolling the dice with a preseason tournament and getting the right teams at the right time and moving on. You are playing these teams with, knowing you're going to play them. And then the other thing is these other teams, I think there's a couple below 300, but for the most part, they're not. So I think that there's going to be some at least decent competition in these other games. But yeah, you start it with a new program. You're gonna start some easy games early, and not including yet, but there's a stretch in there that's pretty decent to get you going before you hit Kansas State, before you hit Louisville, and then you hit Kentucky a week later. So yeah, I think that it's kind of to me strikes the right balance and hits all the right notes for a non-conference schedule, especially for the first season of a new coach.
I've always said you have to have 6 games that you should win with various levels of ease, and then 5 games that'll be tough. I think the schedule really falls close to that. You know, you're going to get a Milwaukee, a Siena, teams that are capable of going to the tournament and pulling that first round upset. Those are still good games to play in the regular season, where you're expected to win, but it's going to be maybe a 10 to 15 point margin. You're going to be playing into the last 10 minutes of a tight ball game against a well-coached program. And I think Indiana has a couple of those in there. I think they have, then depending on the strength of Bethune-Cookman, Lindenwood, Incarnate Wood, how strong are they going to be? Those tend to be on those games that, you probably should win and should, push 20 points by the time that it's done. But this schedule's better, and I think the main thing that I would like to share is what you said, Ryan, is it's scheduled. It's not dependent on teams winning or losing in the tournament. And really, like, you lose 2 games in a tournament and play and win your 3rd game, I don't think that matters. That's as strong of a schedule as you possibly can. These are scheduled. And I would like to see if Indiana plays in any MTEs or tournaments again to at least have 2 or 3 other games scheduled to build a resume, but also just to build your basketball team. And then the regionality of it is incredible here. When you have rivalries of teams, Kentucky, Louisville, Marquette's just up there, Milwaukee with a good program in the Big East. I think those programs. I would like to see some Indiana programs. Again, you run into some, the Missouri Valley with Valpo and Evansville. Those are tough, games. Sometimes you feel like you have nothing to win, because if you win, it's expected. If you lose, it's a major upset. I would like to see some of that come back. Maybe that's wishful thinking because, that's a top 10, top 11 conference. But I think it's valuable. Andy, when you look at the top 4 against the Power 4, it's hard to predict because we haven't seen anything yet, and predictions in July are just awful. But what order of difficulty would you put this in? Obviously, Kentucky has to be the toughest on the schedule, but where do you go from there from what little we know about these programs going in?
Yeah, I mean, I think the at Kentucky one is the easy the easy one to put at the top is the hardest, and I think Kansas State at home is the one on the end. So it's really kind of what you look at between Louisville and Marquette. I think in both those scenarios, playing in Indy and Chicago, you're going to have a decent, if not a really strong number of IU fans. I think I don't know enough about the personnel coming back at either one. And while the rankings would suggest that Louisville is is going to be the one that's ranked higher, I'm not so sure that Marquette won't be more difficult because, one, you're earlier in the season. You've only got one game under your belt in a game that you should have won. Marquette can really get India defensively. That'll be a really good early test for IU, a team that plays the way that they do and as hard as they have. A lot of personnel changes for them as well, so maybe you catch them at a good time in some ways before they've really become fully formed. But for a team that's made up entirely of people who weren't with the program last year, I'm not sure that IU can totally take advantage of the fact that they've got some new pieces. But I think maybe the way that they play will be a little bit different. I think the other thing with Louisville is you look at DeVries played them last year in the Battle for Atlanta, so at least has some familiarity there with what they're doing and how to attack them. And like I said, by then you've got a few more games under your belt and hopefully have a little bit more of an idea of what this IU team is going to be and what its strengths and weaknesses are. Like the Marquette game, you're just not really sure yet. So I'd kind of put that one as tougher, even though at the end of the season they may not be ranked as high as Louisville. But I think the timing of the game and the style that Marquette plays is what kind of pushed that one to the second toughest in my view.
Yeah, they're super. Sorry, I was just gonna say Marquette's super unique in the way they play and the way they get after it. And regardless of who's on the roster, they're gonna do that. And so I think the biggest thing in that game is just Indiana being able to handle it. And whether it's, whether Marquette can shoot this year, or they've got a big guy, or whatever, it's the speed of the game and it's the way they attack you defensively, or where you're on offense. If you can handle that, and they're not as talented as they usually are, you can win. But can you handle it that early in the season? It was a great point by Andy. That's coming early before you've really had a chance to develop your chemistry. And you got to have strong chemistry to be a team that plays that way.
Yeah, and he's building a unique way with guy. He's not too big into the transfer portal, so sometimes you lose Cam Jones up there and you lose some players, but you got some guys who might not have been heavy minute guys that have been in the program that have bought in. He does a really unique job, Shaka Smart up there. But all these teams like offense. I'd have to go study Kansas State a little bit more, but Louisville likes to shoot the three. It might be a record for 3-point shots at Gamebridge between Indiana and Louisville. You talk about modern basketball. That game's going to be won and lost from three, how Louisville plays. And Kentucky with Mark Pope plays that way too, very up-tempo offense. So I think what you see here is Indiana's kind of scheduled teams that I think Indiana wants to play like. And I don't know if that has any truth to it. We'll see. But Indiana wants to play with pace, and they want to shoot the basketball. And what I have seen in covering Marquette, Louisville, and Kentucky, that those teams like to do that as well. So we'll see if Indiana can find a way to defend that early in the season. Andy, let's take those four out. Is there anyone there from that we've looked at bracketology that we could help people kind of understand? I'm not familiar with Lindenwood, but is there anyone there in the other 7 games, just generally program-wise, to share with our listeners?
I think I do it a little bit more I think of it a little bit more by conference as much as anything. I think that's why IU schedule last year ended up being better than people might have expected initially, because they got some SoCon teams. I forget, there was another league, kind of in the middle ranks where they had a couple teams from that ended up being pretty good. And I think that, that definitely helped be a little bit better. So if you think of it from that perspective, it's tough, right? Because you have a few of these that are really not great conferences. The two that kind of stood out to me that initially came to mind with your question were Milwaukee and Siena. Milwaukee from the Horizon League, usually a really balanced league, kind of middle of the road. They were successful last season, finished second in their league. So that would be one I would look at. And then Siena, has had some moments at times. They're in the MAC with 2 A's, I guess. And, they were more middle of the pack a year ago in that one, but they, at least from a ranking standpoint, what we see now, they were, ranked one of the highest of people who are there. So those maybe are the two that stuck out. The other one, I'm just looking at conferences from a year ago. Incarnate Word is in the Southland, which was 19th rated conference on KenPom, but a lot of that had to do with McNeese State being there. So I wouldn't anticipate that being quite the same way again now that Will Wade got a strong ass offer to go coach someplace else. So, not a lot. I think there's going to be a lot of lower end teams, but I guess if I had to pick one, I'd probably lean Milwaukee in that regard.
Milwaukee's interesting. I've been at the Horizon semifinals the last 2 years and up close. That's good basketball. It's just the talent level is a notch below at the Horizon than it is the Big Ten. Indiana should win a game like that by just program wise 12 to 18 points, but Milwaukee has some players typically returning has some players. Cleveland State was in there. They have the ability to beat you if you're not playing well. And I think those are the types of games that you want to schedule. You don't want to schedule 8 cupcakes You want to make sure that you have to play at a high level and then stretch it out as you go. So, all right, fellas, way too early time for the rankings or the predictions, but I'm going to put you on the spot anyway. 11 non-conference games, Ryan. Your first well thought out record after 11 non-conference.
I got them at 9-2. I think Louisville and Kentucky are going to be tough. I think those are the two that I think the swing game is Marquette, as Andy pointed out. But I think that Louisville and Kentucky are both going to be tough for just simply because first-year coach with a first-year roster going to be tough. And so with the way Louisville is presumably going to be able to shoot it, then you're going down and playing at Kentucky. That's what makes that difficult for me. And Marquette, I think that can go either way. But I expect the others to go Indiana's way.
Andy?
I lean 9-2 as well, although I'm not as sure. I fall in line with Ryan. I think they would lose the Kentucky game, given that it's on the road. I think they'll beat Kansas State. I think they find a way to split those others, but I'm not sure which one of them I think they would beat. I know Louisville. They got Ryan Conwell, was a guy that IU was somewhat interested in. They definitely loaded up on shooters. I think they got this Isaac McNeely that I'm looking at their roster. I think he came from Virginia, I want to say, and was a good shooter there. So they've continued to load up a little bit on the kind of guys that he likes. But I think 9-2. I think in the 8-3, 9-2 range. I think 10-1 would be a surprise, just with so many new pieces. I think you're gonna trip up in one of those. So I'd feel pretty good if they were able to split those 4 games, win the rest, and then see what happens in Big Ten play. The other reason I hesitate about which of those other games is it'll be good to see where those Big Ten games do get slotted in, right? You've got not a lot of run up to the Marquette game, which I think is we touched on earlier, but then you got a few more bye games before you get to Kansas State, another bye game after that. And then you at least got at that point 7 games under your belt by the time you face Louisville potentially. And so it's really a matter of, do they slide a Big Ten game in between Bethune-Cookman and Louisville? Do they slide one and the other one between Louisville and Kentucky, and just kind of how that all comes together? It will be interesting to see.
What did West Virginia? I'm just calling up their schedule. Early last year, lost to Pittsburgh on the road. Lost to Louisville in the game 2, second day in a row, in overtime. They had played 3 overtime games, but they did beat Gonzaga in the opening round of the tournament. They did beat Arizona, so they went 2-1 in overtime early. Beat Georgetown, and then Tuesday, December 31st, they went into Kansas and won. So. The hope would be that Lexington isn't an automatic loss with the history that, and I think that was right after injuries happened too. They had a couple injuries, and they still went into Kansas and Allen Fieldhouse and won that game. So hoping that the DeVries, I'm with you guys, 9-2. I think 8-3 puts Indiana in a good position for a tournament berth. I think the Big Ten's going to get more than 8 this year. The SEC was wildly out of balance with 14 of their 16 teams getting in. I think some of that falls to the other conferences. I think the Big Ten will get at least 9 or 10 in this year. Improved coaching across the Big Ten should elevate all teams. But I think Kentucky's a tough one at Rupp Arena. I think you have a chance. You better beat Kansas State at home, protect home court, and then I'm with you guys. I think either one of those can go. But 9-2 is a good position. 8-3 is good. You want to win those. Andy, real quick, do the Indy games and Chicago games, are those neutral when it comes to the rankings that we look at towards the end? Do you know?
Yeah, they would be. I think the only reason they're not is if the one of the schools is I'm going to say running the game, even though that's not the right terminology. But no, I think they'd both be considered true neutral site games, especially because both far enough from Bloomington. So
that's a talk about the non-conference. Just a quick reminder, conference home games only: Iowa, Nebraska, Northwestern, Oregon, Penn State, Washington, Wisconsin. I think that's pretty favorable in just the initial look, with Oregon maybe being the toughest of those home only. The away games, kind of tough: Illinois, Maryland, Michigan, Ohio State, Rutgers, UCLA, and USC. A couple real tough ones, and with Rutgers right now being the easiest one of the way only. And then our home and aways, home and away with Michigan State, home and away with Minnesota, home and away with Purdue. And so you can kind of see that 9-2 with 10 or 11 wins puts Indiana in the tournament. As generally as I can say, I think they were real close last year. In a similar way, you win a game in a conference tournament, and you're sitting well. Any last thoughts on the schedule before we move into our mailbag? Ryan, Andy, anything? We're good to go. Oh, go ahead, Andy.
I'm good. No, I'm good. I think there's some schedule questions, so any lingering thoughts about the Big Ten component, we can probably hit in that. So I'm good.
All righty. So that'll do it for our second segment. Coming up on Assembly Call Radio, we got some good questions in our mailbag from our community members. We'll discuss those next. So stick with us here on the Assembly Call.
All right, guys. I gotta
This is Nick Zeisloft. I never miss an open three, and I never miss an episode of the Assembly Call.
Welcome back to Assembly Call Radio. I'm the coach, Brian Tonsoni, here with Andy Bottoms. We had to say so long in the break to Ryan Phillips. It's always good talking with him. But now it's time for our mailbag. These questions were submitted via our private IU basketball discussion community on Substack, where you can learn more about if you go to assemblycall.com. A lot of good questions. Leland Butler, I think we've already answered your question, but I'll read it. Looks like a challenging pre-conference schedule to me. We've kind of addressed that out. Let's go to John Ringer. Hey, familiar name. Now that the roster's filled out and we have the schedule, what are your predictions for the Big Ten and overall record? So let's go back, Andy. We said 9-2, both of us, I believe, correct? Initially,
yep.
We'll look back at that and readjust. Don't that write that down permanently. We need a lot more information. But right there, I think we are 12th in Torvik rankings. Coming up, I just went over the home and away games and the doubles. Your quick thoughts on Big Ten record and then overall record, Andy?
Yeah, I mean, as you said when we went through it, the home only tends to be, it's all relative, right? Like you still got good teams there, but it tends to be more toward teams that are probably projected to be a little bit lower. Like the best ones based on the preseason Torvik is Oregon and Wisconsin. They're both like between 25 and 30. And then you throw in, so those are 7 of your home games. Your other 3 are Michigan State, Minnesota, Purdue. Feels like, so given what the road schedule shapes up like, feel like you probably need to be 8-2, 9-1 in the home games in league play, which seems, I mean, obviously we're all optimistic based on having seen nothing at this point, but why not be? So, I kind of look at it that way. On the road side, really, really tough. If you look at where, Torvik has the projections, you've got Purdue, you play on the road there, obviously is a double play. Michigan, you only play them on the road. UCLA, only play them on the road. Illinois, only play them on the road. Michigan State, you play on the road as part of that. So you're the top, well, even Ohio State. So it kind of keeps going. So I think IU plays each of the top 7 teams in his preseason rankings on the road as 7 of the 10 road games. So, and then your other 3 become Maryland, Rutgers, and Minnesota. So it's kind of a matter of, can you shock some people and win one of those others, or can you at least do well enough in the few that are a little bit easier when you get down to teams projected toward the bottom of the league. So I think that's probably the make or break if you assume, so to me, feels like Big Ten schedule probably nets out like a 12-8, maybe 11-9, 12-8, 13-7, somewhere in the kind of 2-game swing of that would be where I would, think most of your projections would put you. But that's at least where my head's at based on that. The road schedule is tough. Now, you don't know yet how the games lay out, and we see some of these stretches where you've got, maybe not a true schedule loss, if you will, but some of those where it just gets tough to do based on how these games are stacked together. You'll have the road trip that's going to contain both the UCLA and USC games, so you'll have those 2 back to back. But otherwise, you don't really know how that'll shake out, and can you get off to a good start, get some momentum, or are you punished early on? So I kind of lean toward the somewhere between 11-9 and 13-7 type range. So maybe you split the difference and say 12-8, but that's maybe where I would lean at this point.
I like that. I'm going to go 1 game less. I think if you can protect home court, obviously that's ideal, 10-0. But you're going to run into a buzzsaw. Most teams do at some point. There's some highly ranked teams, if they play as they are ranked currently, will be hard to beat on the road or at home, and your Purdue's and Michigan State's and some of those. So if you go 8-2 at home and you sneak out 3 road games, that's 11-9, combined with 9-2. That puts you at 20-11 going into the Big Ten tournament. And depending on where you won and some of those games, I think Indiana. I know our goals are, Sweet 16, top 10 program, but I'm going to try to be patient a little bit with the end results. I think the number one thing is getting to tournaments. And I know the other side would argue, well, we did that for 2 years with Mike Woodson and then we didn't. And, should we have made changes and all of that? But I think with the roster turnover, the great coaches in the Big Ten and the new hires in the Big Ten, and always, Andy, there are teams at the top that seem to fall down, and then there are teams that aren't considered and move up. So, but let's, you go 19-12 West Virginia, and the reason they weren't let in the tournament, even though we both had them in the tournament for bracketology, is because they had 2 stars injured, and they were like just over 500 with that roster is what I can gather. So that was a pretty good year, first year. So I'm going to go 11-9 in the Big Ten and a total record of 20-11 heading into the Big Ten tournament and predicting an NCAA tournament booth. So the next question also was about SKL said, I see different. I'm predicting 8-3 and 10-10, 18-13, hoping for 2 Big Ten tournament team wins bubbles. Do you guys have any predictions? Thank you for your question. We just asked that. I think, Terry Mark, we probably answered your question early. What is the ideal balance between challenging and easy non-conference games? Andy, do you want to add anything to that? I know I said I like 6-5. I like 5 challenging games of different levels, and at least 4 like Indiana has this year with another mid-major that's really good, maybe a second mid-major from Indiana in there, and then 5 cupcakes. Do you have an ideal balance that you see from your bracketology work?
I don't mind the kind of 7-4 split that they have this year. I think especially because you're not as dependent upon how you perform in a preseason tournament. I think that was because ultimately that's no different than last year, right? Like we knew going in that there would be 4 games that mattered. The challenge was that, and they actually lucked out a little bit because they ended up playing Gonzaga. I mean, didn't turn out this way, obviously, but normally the thought was going in, if you lose that first game to Louisville, you're going to miss out on the chance to face Gonzaga. Now you got that chance and got smoked. So that didn't really work out as well either. But you're just so dependent upon what happens in other things in those scenarios versus these, where it's like there's 4 games, you got those laid out. But I know there's other benefits to go into those events. So not necessarily saying that you don't go to those. And maybe when you do go to one where you've got 3 games, you do schedule another. You go more of a 6 and 5 type scenario where you give yourself a little bit of a cushion there. I think my only what I liked about last year's schedule was, again, that you pulled some teams from notoriously good mid-major conferences. So whether that's the MAC or the Missouri Valley, or I don't think they played a Missouri Valley team last year, but just kind of giving examples of that, or like the SoCon was one last year that has been a traditionally strong league. They played some of the better teams in that, and it benefited them in the long run. I think that was important for last year's team because it was a team and a coaching staff that had proven they weren't just going to run inferior teams off the floor before. I think if you prove in some of the Big 12 teams, the Iowa States, the Texas Techs of the world in the last couple of years have shown, if you can routinely just blow these teams out of the water, there's nothing wrong with those being your bye games, but you set yourself up to really need to do that. So, this year to me skews a little bit more of those 7 games, like more of them are from, lesser conferences and things like that. But if this staff proves they can go out and really, with the style they play and they shoot a bunch of threes, that gives you a chance to really blow out some teams and run the margin up. And we can argue whether that's good, bad, or whatever. But the reality is that's what the net likes and what they'll need to do. So if you get a staff and a program that is good at that, then I think a schedule like this year's is good. I think IU maybe it was, by luck less so than by design, but I think the way that things shook out last year for that team and the way that they played against some of those teams, being able to face some teams from tougher conferences where you still get a little bit of credit, even if you don't win by as much, was a positive. But that's kind of a minor quibble, I would say, in the long run. I think the overall balance is good. I think a lot more of it is in this transitional period, figuring out what you are, what you want to get in. And then as you look at these other events, do you want to get in one that maybe is only 2 games where it's, can you do some of those things versus the 3-game events that the wheels can come off quickly and you don't have a lot of time to recover over a 3-4 day period.
Yeah, it is a fine line to schedule correctly, because you can overschedule and the coaches know their squad and what they want to do. You could also underschedule, right? And then you just need to perform to your schedule when talking about beating teams appropriately if you schedule some of the lowers. I, too, agree with you that the back end seems a little less challenging than last year, but the top end is a little better. And then to Terry, to your question, too, I think what's nice about this schedule is, like, if you're somewhere close to Bloomington, you could go to all 4 non-conference. I think, Andy, your part, I believe you're the one who said it. My old brain is starting to lose some of its matter, but the regional bit of it, I think fans will enjoy playing Kentucky, Louisville, Marquette, and then seeing a team come in, Kansas State, that's not just from a lesser conference. I would eventually like to play in an MTE and keep the 3 or 4, but when they're scheduled and for sure, and you can set your date, whether you're traveling to see them or you have a watch party or something, these are games that people can look forward to. And I know you don't schedule, Coach DeVries doesn't schedule for the fans, but from our point of view, I think it's a challenging schedule. I would like to see it be a little bit tougher, but I totally understand why it is, and I think it's good enough for the NCAA tournament. I'm going to go off script real quick. John in the chat says, "What's the word about Luke Goody?" I have not heard officially one way or the other. The only official thing we got was Anthony Leal was denied, so that would lead to me that it's still being considered. And with Indiana at the 12 scholarship at this point, I think now, yeah, Ristic, it was 11, correct, Andy? And then
so there's
12.
one left.
He was 12.
He was 12. There's
still
one left, which presumably I don't think they'd fill regardless, but it would be goodies if he does get cleared and comes back. But I don't think they have an intention to fill it at this point. Doesn't seem like.
Patrick, you asked a question about Discord. I'm going to pass that on to Jared. Jared will answer that in the community. That's way above my pay grade on that. Doug, thoughts on the roster addition. We talked about that in segment 1, Doug. I think the key answer about surprising movement in the 26 class, don't get caught up in who comes and who doesn't come until they get to school and get on campus. A loss, I forget who it was, Andy, that was just in that went to VCU. But people get upset that we lose a recruit to VCU. Well, these recruiting battles are always a fit and relationship, and you're going to win some and you're going to lose some. So losing that one is not a negative on Coach DeVries. Winning one is not necessarily a positive until we see the outcome once the young man gets to campus and participates. And then, Andy, let's end the show on this one. I think this is a really good question. I don't know who it is. The handle in the Substack was Life version 5.0. So says, I'm feeling somewhat depressed by the team. Not their fault, mine. This whole portal and payment thing give us 12 new players who I know nothing about. I'm sure I'll get pumped up when the season starts, but it's difficult right now. How do you and others deal with this? Let me start, and then I'll be brief and throw it to you. Life, I'll just call you Life version 5.0. It is difficult for those of us who have been around for a long time in this new era of basketball with NIL, the transfer portal, and roster changing. The thing that I would tell you of how do I deal with it, it's college basketball. And when I see Indiana in its red uniforms at Pauley Pavilion playing UCLA, I'm going to root like crazy. And I've kind of passed on the year or month by month looking at players, looking at recruits. I've kind of given up on that until the season starts, and then I'll look at the roster, and then I'm sure I'll have some favorite guys and be able to talk about Connerway and Dorn and all of those guys, but I don't know about them. And it is hard to really feel bought in or tied or connected to the program. I think that's something that college athletic programs are going to have to really deal with here in the next few years with so much movement. But the way I deal with it is, one, it's Indiana. It's Indiana football, baseball, volleyball. I'm going to root for Indiana regardless. And I just kind of given up a little bit on being connected to players. The other thing is then I want Trent Sisley to last 4. I really appreciated Leal and Galloway and some of those guys that have stayed for long, long periods of time. Connect with those kids that are those foundational kids and focus on them, and then appreciate the guys who are here only for a year or two because they do wear the Indiana uniform. Andy, your thoughts on Life's question about how tough it is to adjust to this new portal era?
Yeah, I can give some quick thoughts and throw it to Jared. You're here just in time to answer the last question.
Yes.
So
sorry I'm late, guys.
No, you're all good. Yeah, I think I definitely can understand the sentiment as much as anything of really trying to figure that out and trying to know who these guys are and who do you gravitate toward versus having versus really having a history with them like you have some of the other guys. For me, the excitement of this year and what I'm most excited about is to see a different style of play, and just to be excited about new players and kind of what the program direction is going to be under DeVries. And that to me is really what in some ways not the only thing you can get excited about, but I think it is a key thing to be excited about because it does lay the groundwork for is there a roadmap to sustain success? Is there a way that you're going to see people stick with the program that then makes it a little bit less like, who the heck are these guys? It's a new roster every year. And people like my mom who's printing out a roster before every season and trying to figure out who people are when I'm talking to her on the phone. So I think there's that. So I think it's an understandable sentiment. I think probably going to happen more often than maybe we would like it to as we move forward with sports. But for me, like I said, my excitement lies more in what is the style of play going to look like. And it at least on the surface, everything you see and hear that you've been able to so far looks like it's going to be different and more exciting and fresh. And so that I can get excited about. And then from there, once the season starts, I think like always, you find certain players that you gravitate toward the way they play and how they fit in that style and things like that. And I think everybody may gravitate toward different people when you get there, but it is hard not having at least a couple guys to to kind of walk in knowing like I know what I'm getting from this guy. You have nobody that fits that bill at this point. Maybe if Luke Goody comes back, that helps a bit, but that's really the only chance you got of somebody who you really know what to expect and who's built that relationship.
Yeah. Jared, welcome to the show. I was on the run sheet and didn't see you pop in. I would have said something instead of going on.
I thought initially you were just like freezing him out, but
that's what I thought too. It's like, dang, they're really mad at me this time.
Which I really respected if you were doing that, but that's not really your
no.
Nature, Coach. So I figured it wasn't that, and I thought if I didn't acknowledge it, and then you went on and closed the show all the while, Jared.
That would have been hilarious.
Sitting there in the corner, I while it would have been hilarious, there was a part of me that was like, I knew you'd have felt bad. So everything
that was about to happen. I'm always a little bit ahead, but I go back and forth when Eddie's here producing. Thank you, Eddie, behind the scenes producing. I don't have my second screen up, and so I don't have the run sheet next to the computer. So I go back and forth between tabs, and Jared popped in, and then I heard you say, "Well, hello, Jared." I'm like, oh man, how long had he been there? Jared, welcome to the show.
Not too long.
Thank you,
but
not too long.
So you can take that question and run with it. We've talked about the non-conference schedule. We talked about Prince Alexander Moody tonight. This is your time to shine. You probably have a lot to say. Go ahead and share with us your thoughts.
I mean, the funny thing is my appearance on the show really is commensurate with the value that I can provide. And maybe then that's good that I kind of stepped into this question because – and we've talked about this before, just I think a lot of the changes and then also just the struggles of the program and a lot of things have added up to, I think a lot of fans feeling, if not disconnected, just kind of a different connection, to the program and maybe even the sport itself. And I'm kind of like you, Coach. Like, I think to a certain extent, things do feel so different from the basketball that I grew up watching and even, how it felt, in the 2013 season. Right, where you had these teams that you had kind of, seen them together and, the rivalry with Indiana and Michigan, like we had some good battles with them and like those things grow and develop over time. And you just see less of that now. But I think what's amazing, like the power of the sport is that even with all of that and it not quite being as powerful, it's still awesome, And so like I feel much more disconnected now during the off season than I used to. And part of that is just being in a different season of life with my family and having a little bit less time to put into it. But I also just kind of find myself checking out a little bit more because it's like, all right, let's just see what the roster is and let's get to the games because that's the fun stuff. So I don't know. It's hard. There's a lot of complex feelings, but I think it's easy to get excited about Indiana again this year because there's a new direction and what's that going to look like and the freshness of it all. So that part of it, once the games roll around, I think everybody will be locked in. But I don't know, it's just kind of making the offseason a little different because you don't quite know what to do with it all. It's like, what does this matter? Does this mean anything? So I don't know. But the sport is still amazing. So when November rolls around, we'll all be here.
The big question is, have you seen the mic'd up videos of the two coaches, Norton and who else, Andy? Who was the other one?
Kenny Johnson was the other one.
Kenny Johnson.
No.
You missed.
I have not. Do I need to go watch those?
No. We just commented on early on the show about my disdain for workout videos, and I actually like these because you get to know I knew nothing about Coach Norton, and then Kenny Johnson had been here before, and Andy said something. You can kind of see what they're going to emphasize. Of all videos, mic up the coaches. I can tolerate the coaches being mic'd up.
Yeah, what coach does not want to see is like a 45-second video of only 3-point shots that go in and dunks, which will never be attempted in games. That's really where you lose him. But this at least there was enough coaching in there that he didn't recoil at watching it.
Be tough on the ball. Be tough on the ball. I like it.
Andy, we've really been misled by those off-season shooting videos because you never see the shots go in like that once the games come around.
No,
but hopefully that will change. Hopefully that is something to look forward to for this season.
Well, then you always get the ones too when they're doing their workout videos, and then the people complain about them not shooting free throws, right? So it's been quite a different level of off-season.
We haven't seen that yet either, though. So somebody's got a checklist somewhere that they're like, okay, this one was great. When is the free throw shooting one coming? I'd
let's
really
just
like
win.
to see a school go all in on the opposite of what I just described. Just show bricks over and over again, just to see what reaction everybody has, just to give a dose of reality of, not everything is perfect. We're going through
we're not very far along. We're way behind where I want to be right now.
We're going through the process. Everything's going to be fine, but it looks rough right now. But
yes,
probably not going to see that.
That'd be funny.
No, not at all. What else is on your mind, Jared?
I'm just happy to see you guys. I miss you guys, miss these chats, and this is kind of the lull in the sports calendar right now. The finals are over and got some baseball, but now we're waiting for football to start. I would say catch your breath now because, we're a football school now. So as soon as football starts, we know how exciting that's going to be. And then obviously the excitement of this season coming. So it kind of feels like the calm before the storm a little bit. So we'll have plenty of time to get ramped up for basketball while we're enjoying Kurt Zignetti's Hoosiers on the football field.
Yeah. I mean, it could be worse. There's an Eagles podcast I listen to. They do a show every single day, even in the off season, like Monday through Friday in the off season. I mean, they're really working hard to come up with content. And it's one of my favorite podcasts. So I listen to it either way, but it is a grind to be able to do, to try to come up with stuff to do that, which,
oh man.
Yeah.
At least in football, you have a bigger roster, so you could just go player by player.
Yeah, it was, who knows? But
oh man,
yeah.
I think it's hard for me to follow the Cubs podcast every day. I can't even consume that every day for me. I'm sure there are some people that can when they play 162 games and you have a podcast every day about what went on. I tune in occasionally.
Yeah. So go ahead. What was the consensus on the new recruit?
Prototype was the word that came out. A DeVries prototype. All of us kind of talked in and around that.
Nice.
My big takeaway was elite name. That was my takeaway.
Does have an elite name. That's for sure. That is for sure.
That was pretty much it. That was
okay. I guess I'll have to listen back to the podcast.
That was my main contribution, other than watching some highlight videos. Although one of the highlight videos was here's how he scores, and it's from spot ups. But then he would be attacking closeouts and driving to the basket. I'm like, well, that's not what I think of when you write spot up on the video.
No.
There were some spot ups on the video, but in the same section, so it was a little bit odd. And
well, and Ryan said a really good piece too. It's almost everyone can shoot, and then short of a couple other players can handle the basketball in a variety of ways. Our center can play out and make passes and drive to the basket, right? His son is not the best driver of the basketball, more of a just a pure shooter Miller Kopp or some of those guys. But all of these guys are going to be 6'4", 6'5", long, lengthy.
Yeah.
Some of them are better shooters, some of them are better drivers, but they can do both. The Connery kid can do both. He's more of a score at the rim guy than a shooter, but shooting. And we don't know how it'll play, Jared, yet, but we kind of get the idea of that prototype. You better damn well shoot the basketball if you're going to play for DeVries Indiana Hoosiers. And I know that makes you happy, and I know that makes
it's
me
about
happy.
time. Yes.
I mean,
call me crazy. I think that's a skill to prioritize. More often than not, I think that works out.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of stuff in those videos with, there was harping on guys about being shot ready and things like that. I know I think it was Connerway that Kenny Johnson was talking to, that he's you're a really good shooter when you're on balance. You got to work on that and keep an eye on those things. So yeah, it's
wow.
Yeah.
I mean,
all right.
The ladies don't like guys who pass the ball or defend. They like the guys who get their name in the paper, and you get the name in the paper by scoring points.
That's right. Not by playing defense. Not by making the extra pass.
That's what I told my boys. You pass it, you might not get it back. You got to shoot. Tonsoni shoot. Let somebody else. Let the banker's son defend. Sorry if any of you
take your shot.
Yeah, sorry if any of you in the chat are bankers, but your kid's going to be a screener and a rebounder. My grandkids are going to be the shooters. Here's a really fun story. So a good friend of mine, state championship coach over here at Northwestern in Kokomo. I coached his son in AAU when I was out of head coaching for a while. And we were having dinner. He goes, Brian, every summer I line kids up, start of the summer on the end line. And I'm like, all right, take a step forward if you're a shooter. And he goes, like 75% of the kids take a step forward. He goes, then I just start on the left side, and I'm going to take a step back, take a step back, take a step back, take a step back. You go down the line. He goes, okay, if you didn't take a step back, you are the makers. These are the guys who are going to get shots this summer. You all can take shots, but the makers, be a maker or do something else.
Yeah.
And hopefully Coach DeVries has recruited a lot of makers.
Let's hope so.
Well,
let's hope so.
They've got good track records. So
yeah. All right. Hey, I got to run. I'll let you guys wrap up if you need to, but
we'll do a little after dark, Jared.
All right. Sounds good.
Then,
Jared, good seeing you for a few minutes. And
you too, Andy.
I was glad I let Coach know that you were here. We'd have been done 10 minutes
yes,
ago.
Thank you.
So,
thank you.
Anyway. All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Eddie.
All
right. So that's going to do it for this week's episode of the Assembly Call. If you want to see us do the show live, join us at assemblycall.com on Thursday nights or Wednesday nights or whenever we schedule at night for the live broadcast of our Assembly Call radio recording. Thanks to Bob Thompson for producing our music, and thanks to John Ringer of rigdesign.com for our designing logos. Thanks to Eddie for producing behind the scenes. Love you, and thank you for listening. Until then, keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim, and go Hoosiers. Here I come, Mrs. Tonsoni.
That's it. We're done. No more questions. I think they've gotten enough show.
Probably.
It's a good amount of show.
Good non-conference, Jared. We feel pretty good about the non-conference. Andy and I think it could be just a little bit better as the team develops a little bit, adding the soft teams are a lot softer than – they're not Tom Crean soft by any means. But I do like the 4 conference, and the point was brought up about and I don't know if you were listening or not about the being regional. We're playing Kentucky, we're playing Louisville, we're playing Marquette, which is close rival in the Big East. We have a team coming to Assembly Hall. I think that's you don't schedule. Coach DeVries doesn't schedule for you and I, but that's a better schedule for fans.
I like
to watch
schedule.
whether you attend or plan to go or a watch party or just sitting at home in your man cave. Those are games to get excited, and opposed to last year, there were some mid-level games that were better than we've had in a long time, but there really weren't any marquee unless you were traveling down to the Bahamas, and South Carolina was the only one in Assembly Hall. So I think that's I think it's a good start, and just anxious to see what this team looks like. Do you know if the trip is televised or will be delayed broadcast or anything? Or
I don't know. I haven't seen anything on that yet.
I haven't seen anything as well.
But I as far as the schedule goes, I mean, I think you're right. Like, ideally, you get maybe another marquee game or two and just have a little bit higher quality on it. But I think for a coach's first season, I think it's a really good schedule. Because I think you do, Kentucky's back on there. Like you said, you've got some of those games that fans can look forward to that are going to be good measuring sticks. But then some other games where hopefully you can rack up some victories. And I mean, Coach DeVries just needs to get to the tournament. Get to the tournament your first year. That's successful. That's really something to build on. And I think it's a schedule that mostly sets up to give them opportunities to do that. So, like, I agree with you. Once we're cooking with gas again, and a little higher level consistently, we can schedule a little bit better. But as a stepping stone towards that, I think the way they did it makes some sense to me.
Yeah, and my only criticism is just the back end. I would prefer not playing any 300s. But you can't go Michigan State too and play 9 teams that are top level, because you can burn out a team, and especially early on. I think this is an appropriate schedule for where the program is in a new direction.
Yeah.
It's missing one game, and it's not the biggies. It would be like replacing Chicago State with an Evansville or a Ball State. That would, but those games are tough now because you have nothing to win with the public, I guess, and just all that stuff too. Is like, you win, you're supposed to, you lose, then you lose to an in-state. But I like
It's
when
not
we
even
played,
just win anymore. You need to win up to your analytical expectation.
Yeah,
or the post-game show host will say that it's not a good win.
But no, I think you got to have at least 4 big opponents, and we do. And you add a 5th, or you add an MTE to something like this down the road when you are in a more comfortable position and know your program and know your team. But yeah, I think it's good. I'm going to try to get to. I don't know if I can get to Lexington, but I think I'm going to try to get to Chicago. I like Shaka, so I hope he loses that one. But no, good schedule. I think the recruiting. Like you and I have kind of. I'm not into the recruiting much anymore. We'll leave that to all the other guys that do that for a living. Alex and everyone else. But again, it just. I don't know if it's wishful thinking, but it just seems, and I do think I'm guilty of that a little bit. It just, Coach Woodson had a plan. I mean, every coach has a plan. To say I'm excited because DeVries has a plan, I don't know that that's fair. I like what I think DeVries' plan is. I guess that's where I'm going to settle in.
Well, yes, some plans are a little bit more clear from the outside looking in, and some plans are articulated better than others. And some plans make more common sense than others. So not all plans are equal. But
I see where you're going there. It's kind of like my golf shot, right? Some days it goes straight. Some days it doesn't go.
Yeah, and I don't really know, what part of it, like on what you were just talking about kind of checking out more on recruiting. It's kind of hard for me to separate. There's a lot of different variables because, like, at the same time, there's been all these changes that have certainly sapped some of my enthusiasm for it. It's also just a different time for me in life with 2 young kids, new dog, new job. There's just been all kinds of stuff. So for me, when I'm looking through and it's like, okay, well, I got to chop something. Well, okay, recruiting is going to be one of those things. But, if there weren't all these other things happening in my life at the same time, would I still be as checked in? Is it more that than it is the changes? I guess that's what I don't really know personally.
No, I see where you're at too. With me, it's information. There's so much information, and we're part of it. That's why I like what we do, the post game shows, and then when our weekly shows, we're just talking basketball. But there's so much information, and so is he 150? Is Prince Alexander Moody 150, 170, 104? And there's so much information, and so I'm at a point where, I'm going to wait till I start seeing stuff a little bit more because it's so much to digest now with recruiting and then the portal and all of that. I was looking at all the returning players in the Big Ten today.
Yeah.
And then all the new players from the portal. I'm like, how can you even make a prediction? I know you got Torvik's rankings and you can go off of that and Ken Palm and all of that, but seriously, you could have really good portal and it doesn't piece together. You could have a questionable portal and those guys play like crazy for each other and overachieve, right? And so I'm going, how do you even, I knew we were going to do some predictions and so forth, so I'm looking like, okay, maybe the top 6 have 5 or 6 guys back. I don't know if they're good guys back, but they have 5 or 6 guys back. So I've just taken answer our last question from Life version 5.0.
Yeah,
I've just taken a step back too because you just get geeked out and stressed out where before the recruiting was so much more important too. To get your Yogi Ferrell and those guys because you knew they were going to be there for 2 or 3 years. Now, guy works out, doesn't work out. There's a way out of it earlier than usual. I don't know that it's still important, but for me, it's not. So I've taken a step back for different reasons than you have.
Yeah, I mean, recruiting is definitely still important for sure.
Right.
It's just it feels like a less valuable investment of your time as a fan. Because it used to be with recruiting. And even as recently as like a Yogi Ferrell, it's like, wow, you get this guy. Like he's probably going to be here for 3 years. So I'm going to invest in the recruitment, invest in the development, get to see this all the way through. And now you pretty much just kind of look at every guy who comes in. It's like, well, okay, we're going to have him for this year, but I don't know.
Yeah, it only used to be your guys going pro early, 2 year, 3 year, after 3 years or whatever that you'd lose. But still have
Yeah.
him for a couple years, right?
Yeah.
So
So
Sicily
that's
could
right.
leave after a year. I hope not, and I'm not saying I have, but you bring a freshman in, he could leave for a variety of reasons. It's just for me, it's a comfort thing to once Prince Alexander Moody is now a Hoosier. Now I'm going to read about him. Now I'm going to watch his film. Now I'm going to pay attention to the articles. But I can't even recall the guy's name who went to VCU that had Indiana in its last 4. Maybe that's a bad host, but it's just the fact that, okay, young man, you made a choice. You came on a visit. You went somewhere else. Good for you. But I'm concerned with the guys who are wearing the Indiana jersey. And
yeah, I mean, some of the
I don't
stuff
know.
is just off-season ephemera. It just,
yeah,
it's like there's so much airtime and space that has to be filled on a daily basis. And so there's just stories that come and they go and they come and they go. And I guess the point you're making is just investing a little bit less time in those stories, and trying to
How
focus on
about
the
if
stuff.
you were bought into football recruiting?
Oh, boy.
Holy cow.
I know. Yeah. It's a new world. That's why I still love focusing on the games. It's really more the recruiting and the roster building that I find it's still important. I just find it less interesting and a less valuable investment of time because it just feels like it's hard to even predict it or how to analyze it.
Well,
so
no,
bring me the games. Let's go.
You're right. I admire, the national podcast, and they follow all this stuff all the time. And you're looking at the Field of 68, and they do a great job. I get their newsletter and I listen to all that stuff. But how in the heck do you put together 300 and some teams and know, and I think they do a good job at trying to do it. But man, what a large amount of work that investment is. And I, again, kudos to those guys. I think they do a really, really good job of that. But man, that's something for me right now. Like, okay, when practice starts or we get some film clips from here, we can talk about this closeout or this or how they're doing that. I think that's for us. That's and we have to talk about these guys when they come in.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about them when they come in, not, here are the, like I said, go to Inside the Hall. So,
yep.
Hey, we lost a good one. Rick called it a career, didn't he?
He did.
Congratulations.
He did. We're gonna try and have him on.
We do need to have him on.
Yeah,
just
we're gonna
talk
have him
stories.
on a future episode here. Yep.
What a good guy. Just an
Very good
outstanding guy.
He's a
I
White Sox
appreciate.
fan. He's a man of high character.
All right, now you had to bring that up, and Rick, I know you're listening, so just has time. He takes time to talk to me. I'm just a old ball coach hanging around the media room, and when people of great knowledge like that share what they do and ask and talk to you and stuff, it's just so congratulations on a great career, and thanks for being part of the Indiana universe. And anytime I'm hosting the show, buddy, you can just pop on. So whether the other guys want you on or not, you can come on. Now, Alex, that might be a different story.
He might not notice you when you pop on, though.
Yeah, right. Dude, that was weird, man.
Text him.
Yeah.
That's funny. All right. Well, we'll get another one of these going soon because we're going to have Rick on, and we'll, ramp up as the season gets closer. But glad we were able to do this tonight. Thanks for hosting, Coach.
You're welcome. Always. Just let me know. I'll get those run sheets going and kind of do my part.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Eddie, by the way, too. Just so much more relaxing for this old guy when you're producing. So thanks a lot. Thanks to everyone in the show. Dale, I saw you leave a little bit earlier. We still got that video clip of that baseball game. We gotta put on a show here. Eddie's working on that for me. But have a good night, everybody.
Nice. See y'all.